would like to ask the first question, sir. Like over the years, you said we have seen a lot of changes, a lot of transformation and all that, right? Now the generation, like the children born from 2025 are the Zen Beta, right? So the Zen Beta is something, the Zen Beta, what do you think we can expect from this Zen Beta? What type of change do you think we can expect from Zen Beta in terms of their thought process? And, what type of generation are we going to see?
At one level, I am awed by these people. Not to me, I'm a technophobe. I don't use even today electronic transfer of money. I'm terrified of it. And except for research purposes, I don't use digital technology. I'm very confused. The other day when I had to upload boarding pass on my DigiYatra, I had to ask one of my team members to help me. Small things, just pressing a couple of buttons, even those are very formidable for me. But when I see the felicity with which these bright young kids, even at the age of 8 or 10, handle technology, it's amazing to me. Even today, an email, I understand it, I use it regularly, but it's a miracle to me. The first time I used email was way back in 1996. I wrote a detailed discussion paper before leaving government. And friends from all over the country and the world, they asked me to send copies. I said, no problem, I'll make copies and give me your mailing addresses. And he said, no, all that is not required. Email that. I never heard email at that time, 96. He said, no, you would not know, go to Software Technology Park. You take by the time electronic typewriters are there, some floppy and disk, that sort of a thing, vaguely we knew. I think disks were not there yet, floppies. So I took my secretary who was more adept at it than me. I went to Software Technology Park and the director courteously took me around and then he put it in some slot, he pressed some buttons, it is gone. I said, where has it gone? I said, to all the addresses you have given, it has gone. I never understood how it went. Even now, I don't understand how it goes, honestly. To me, it's still a miracle. You can imagine how thousands of years ago, almost everything was a miracle to our ancestors. Whereas for these kids, it's normal. Like I'm sure electricity was a miracle in Benjamin Franklin's time. And today, we all take it for granted. I don't think we think too much about what's actually happening, the electron flow and so on and so forth. So these kids are inheritors of the best of our society. The only problem is too much of divided attention. There are too many distractions, too many things competing to engage them. In our time, it was relative poverty and deprivation that made us focused. Poverty, and therefore you have to succeed. Your parents or somebody told you education or something else is the most important thing in life, yes. And in any case, there were no distractions. The only distraction we had was movies. And of course, in Loyola College, there were no chance of going to movies except once in a while. But medical school, once we went, I used to watch a movie a night. Most of us did, because that was the only thing in life, apart from study and so on and so forth. Whereas today, there are so many distractions. Therefore, focusing attention may be a difficult thing. If you help them recognize that technology can be a powerful tool to make human life better, not merely a distractionary tool, I think they will do spectacularly well. Provided, and this is the most important proviso in the context of India, the quality of education they receive. The tragedy of our country is the quality of education actually has fallen. I'm not talking of the best in the country. The best in the country are comparable to the best in the world. But a nation's future is determined not by the best, but by the average. The average in India is abysmally poor. We are among the worst in the world. I'm saying this great pain and anguish. I'm a great optimist, but we are among the worst in the world. Out of 74 countries and entities surveyed, India was 73rd. Thank God there's a country called, thank God comes naturally. There's a country called Kyrgyzstan, Central Asian Republic. If they were not there, we would have been the worst country in the world. And the response of the Indian establishment is, instead of figuring out what is wrong and how to set it right, they said, we will never participate in such a global survey again, so that nobody can challenge us. I used to talk about this PISA survey and India's ranking in order to mobilize the opinion of the people and to mobilize the elites to change the way education is administered in the country. But instead they said, henceforth, we will not have PISA surveys. This happened in 2009. Now 15 is the 16th year. We did not have another survey of that kind. So we are appallingly bad in education. While I'm a great optimist, we must also recognize what is wrong. You cannot go against evidence, and we can easily set it right. So if we set right education to give opportunity to everybody, if we somehow help the young people to focus in the midst of all these distractions, I think these youngsters will do spectacularly well.
Exactly. I do agree with you 100% coming from the education background. We are only trying to copy the education system from different countries, but we are not, trying to look at what is good for us people and our children in the surroundings that they are in. Like, otherwise, why will the international curriculums actually overtake the Indian curriculums? Now the floor is open for questions, whoever would like to ask.
Good morning, sir. Myself, I am Tama Dhananjay Reddy from Kuntur. Thank you, sir, for giving a very much insightful session. You are saying that, sir, not only saying, sir, we are experiencing, true education is missing, sir. To overcome superstitions, hatred, violence, or to improve the quality of education, what are the 2-3 major things required at institution level, at curriculum level, or at teaching methods level, sir?
Let me be brief, and let me limit myself to school education to start with, because without those foundations, higher education, whatever you do is irrelevant. I'm actually very optimistic because the demand for education is incredible in this country, irrespective of your caste, region, religion, etc., or economic status, rural or urban. Every parent in India wants the children to do well in education. And every parent is willing to sacrifice to any extent. Disproportionately their income, they are willing to spend money. That is our strength. And governments are spending a lot of money. In AP and Telangana, I don't know if you're aware, the average expenditure per child in school is 1 lakh rupees per year in school education. So if you tell me that 1 lakh rupees you can't educate children, then I would say you're an idiot. It's not resources. We have everything in place. We can easily set it right because the demand is very strong. We are lucky. Now, how is the demand manifesting? How do the parents know children have succeeded? What is the meaning of success? In our system, all that the parents understand, the people understand, the media understands is what is the rank, what are the marks. No, there's nothing wrong. You have to have some measure. But we defined success terribly. We measure it horribly. Define success intelligently, measure it honestly. I guarantee you within a few years' time everything will change. Somehow or other, all the stakeholders, the kids, their parents, the teachers, the administrators, the managements and society will figure out a solution. I have no expectation that we will make everybody work better. I have seen too much of government to think that just because you chant a mantra, all the teachers of India, all the administrators of India will suddenly become moral giants and they will do wonderfully. It will never happen. There are always wonderful people, there are always rotten people. Express your ideas effectively. That is the first hallmark of education. If I don't understand what you're saying, if I don't know how to say what I have in mind, then there's no education. Comprehension, communication. Second, can you understand the mathematical concepts and where and why and how to apply them, and actually learn to apply them in real life in problem solving, not mathematical formulae, not mugging up. That's the second one. Third one, science. What is science? Science is nothing but applied logic. With the given facts, can you apply logic and derive reasonable conclusions? Science is not S equals UT plus half AT square. These three things are tested in PISA. Supposing something like that we start doing, this is what you should aspire to at each level. The levels of learning. It's not rote learning, and of course it's not mass copying. Today's examinations, pardon me for saying so, if I am sounding harsh to penetrate our minds, mass copying has become rampant, and rote learning is the means of excelling in education, if you call it excelling. Even in universities, pardon me saying so, if you mug up the last 3 years question papers in the last week, you get a first class. What kind of a rubbish is this? So if you do this evaluation better, and honestly, the word I have to use now because we mastered copying. Everywhere rampant mass copy. There are ways of overcoming that. I guarantee you, every segment of the educational enterprise will transform themselves because incentives are altered. Their behavior changes, outcomes will change. There are other small stuff. aggregation of schools. We have teacher-student ratio, which is very good. For every 14, 15 kids, there is a teacher. But we have deploying them very badly. There are schools where teachers outnumber students. I'm not misspeaking. The other day, my wife was telling me, there's only one child in that school, there's only one teacher, and the newspapers wrote a big box item because the teacher actually is working and teaching that child. As if it's a great thing. The teacher is wonderful, I appreciate. But there's a ridiculous way of deploying resources. So rationalize the schools. Bring in, take away 5% of the teachers or 3% teachers and train them, and then make them inspection and monitoring staff. And when we were kids, there used to be regular inspections. Inspect and monitor and guide and improve. Bring in the community, the parents and former students, the alumni of the school, because alumni of a school or a college always have emotional attachment. Therefore, they would want to always improve. And retired good teachers, involve them in managing the school so that accountability is there. Simple steps you can do. But the heart of the issue is change the assessment. Change the assessment. Everything will change. So it's easy. You don't have to spend a rupee extra. I am actually opposed to spending 1 rupee more on education because it's all going down the drain. Our shameless parties and governments, I normally don't use harsh words, but there are occasions when you have to use harsh words. Our shameless parties and governments, the only imagination they have is, in Telangana, 11,000 teachers recruited as if teacher shortage is there, and then full page advertisements. In Andhra, the biggest electoral promise is mega DSC. You haven't even figured out what the problem is. We have no concern at all for education. You made education and government into an employment agency, not delivering the service that the people need with the public money, with the tax money. It's an absolute disgrace, an unmitigated disaster. So we can easily set it right. I'm very confident. But not without changing the ways. These 2-3 things you do it, rest of it society will figure out solutions.
Thank you, sir. That was an excellent answer. Can I ask this child? Come.
Excuse me, sir. My name is P. Keshav and I am from Putsiram College. The only doubt is is the increase of poverty limit and the decrease the poverty percentage in the country by using technology and increase the education by using technology.
No, our greatest friend in the country is technology. The good things happen not because of governments, not because of politics. I'm sad to say this. Though some good things did happen from politics, but not many good things. Many bad things also are happening. Because of technology, because of science, because we no longer can create barriers to technology. A lot of good things are happening. And because at long last we woke up and we gave up the stupid pseudo-socialism. It was not true socialism. True socialism is about education and healthcare, opportunity and dignity. Pseudo-socialism is about government controlling everything and stifling individual freedom and initiative. So we gave that up, at least in large parts, not fully, and technology. So already things are happening. Our poverty line is a very base line, you must understand. It measures only the capacity to buy and eat 2,500 calories of food. And therefore that poverty is declining is self-evident. And as long as the standard is the same, it is a reasonable measure, but not good enough, because in a growing, in a prosperous world, we must not say anybody who is not starving is non-poor. It's not enough. We must shift eventually to a more dynamic poverty line. For instance, many other countries have a line, if you are a certain percentage below the median income, then you are poor. Then you have to do whatever it takes to lift you a little bit more. India also has to move in that direction, but definitely poverty is declining. But the heart of the issue is, even if poverty is declining, the human capacity is not built up, productivity is not growing because of failure of education and because of failure of healthcare. So if 3 things are done, quality education, we discussed a bit of it. It's a very complex subject. We can go into considerable details, but no, the essence of it we discussed briefly today. Quality of healthcare, India spends the lowest amount in the world from the government on healthcare, 1% of the GDP, give or take a 0.1% or something. And yet with that 1% we are achieving significant results. It's one of the few areas where there's a remarkable improvement of lifespans, of morbidity, mortality, etc. But we need to do much more. I mentioned to you already 60 million people falling into poverty, descending into poverty every year. So healthcare. Third is, India is unique in 3 numbers. No other country has even one number. Among G20 countries, even one number is unusual. All 3 nobody has. First is the number of people or the percentage of people dependent on agriculture as the primary source of livelihood. I used to say 42%. The other day, the Finance Commission Chairman Arvind Panagaria told me when I met him last week, he said, Dr. JP, now it's 46% because after COVID, the rural employment has gone up in agriculture. It's 46%. It is the highest by far in any large economy in the world. Typically, in the rest of the world, 20%, 25% are dependent on agriculture. Rich world, only 5%, 3%. The second number is 65% rural population even today. We are the slowest urbanizing country in the world. Highest rural population in the world. In the modern world, notwithstanding Gandhiji's romantic notions, modernization is equal to urbanization is equal to prosperity. Only 35% urbanization, the lowest among all significant countries in the world. A third number, about 85% of all the workers are in the unorganized sector without a regular monthly wage security. About 85%. Unthinkable anywhere else in the world. These 3 numbers, they capture the essence of poverty in India. To address that, among other things, the central issue in my opinion is, how do you build small towns as magnets of economic growth to absorb a large number of low-skilled people and to encourage in situ urbanization so that people don't have to migrate to distant big cities with low level of skills? In this one sentence, I compressed a lot. There's no time to go into greater detail, but it's critical. It's critical.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we'll give alternate.
Sir, I'm a retired professor, Andhra University Engineering College. Vijay is my name. You declare yourself agnostic, okay?
Agnostic.
Agnostic, okay? And you don't bother about the existence of God or not.
Absolutely.
Okay? But God is the root cause for all dogmatic beliefs I has done. Now, what is the difficulty for you to declare yourself as an atheist?
I told you, a cowardly atheist is an agnostic possibly. Also a sense that we don't know enough, not that God is a solution, that there is so much in the universe that we do not know or understand. Perhaps it does not even require understanding. Also a recognition, this is important. Faith is hardwired in our genes for many people. Only a few people can transcend that and allow reason to prevail. And however bad things are, as long as faith is manifested in a sensible way, in a pragmatic way, in a rational way, that is what is keeping most people on the straight and narrow path. In India, by and large, despite all the problems, we are relatively peaceful, relatively orderly, and relatively non-violent. Not because of government or the forces of law and order. India has no rule of law worth mentioning. Might is right in this country. It is because of the power of tradition. It is because of the fear of God and sin. It is because of the fear that what will others think of me? నేను తప్పు చేస్తే ఏమనుకుంటారు? మన వంశం వాళ్ళో, మా నాన్నో, లేకపోతే మా తండ్రో, మా చుట్టాలో, బంధువులో. It's because of social controls. Now, if we destroy the social controls without building a framework of rule of law, and we are nowhere near building a framework of rule of law, and those of you in Andhra Pradesh, you know more than anybody else how rule of law is deficient here. It's a Gonda Raj that has gone on and is going on in some respects. Might is right in this country. And if we destroy the power of tradition, the positive power of tradition, then there's nothing that separates us from anarchy. And therefore, I respect true faith, not bogus faith, not superstition, not demonstration of their faith in God, but I have great respect for Pope Francis. I have great respect for any other genuinely spiritual person, even if I don't understand spiritualism, as long as that person actually manifests that in the form of humanism and finds a link between individual growth and collective good, I have great respect. And I realize their voice is more powerful than my voice. I don't want to silence that voice as long as it is rationally expressed. So it's also a pragmatic choice I'm deliberately making. I know coming here and saying this, I'll get a barrage of attack, but I'm not stranger to a barrage of attack. We have to look at what is best for society at a point of time. Have I replaced God in this country adequately to make human behavior more socially productive? My answer is no. And therefore, I'm not interested in your faith, I'm interested in your actions, your manifestations of your faith. Therefore, rationalism and humanism are far more important to me than atheism. Take Richard Dawkins, a brilliant evolutionary biologist and a great atheist. I enjoy his books, but he angrily says, you're not doing any great service to anybody. You're antagonizing people. Perhaps that harsh edge can be given up. You can give relevance to other people. I don't know if it will satisfy you.
Good morning, sir. My name is Sheikh Hafizunisa from Potti Sri Ramalu College. And so my question is, politicians use public money to promote their interests in wasted, like religious and superstitions, promote their interest in superstitions. And I don't understand why politicians make a fake oaths, and people don't understand the why they make the fake oaths, and people get to their politicians. I mean, it's like they know that they are not actually probably correct, and but still they follow politicians and support politicians. I don't know why like that, but people know that that's wrong, and they don't like we should support politicians. I feel like if I am able to conduct an election, means definitely my vote is to a Nota, because no one is perfect. No one is perfect, and everyone knows
I couldn't
that.
get your name. Your name.
Sheikh Hafizunisa, sir. Hafizunisa.
Hafiz is okay?
Hafiz, yes,
okay.
sir.
Hafiz,
Yes.
it's a good question.
Thank you.
But if you start thinking politicians are different animals from another species, they're all evil, that does not solve the problem. They are human beings. I would actually say they're among the better human beings. Despite our common perception, a person would not get into politics unless there is a desire to do something for the community and a desire to acquire a name for herself or himself. And there's nothing wrong in these two ambitions. A politician has no serious beliefs in general. The politician has only one God. That God is the vote. If by doing a certain thing the politician believes that he gets the vote, he will do it. If he thinks he will not get the vote, he will not do it. So at a fundamental level, the politicians of India are no longer leading, they are following. The word leaders does not apply to most politicians of India. They are mere followers. Now, that means the people are guilty. That's a very foolish answer, because then what do you do with the people? Shall I send away all these people to some island and then import some other people elsewhere? Nonsensical. The answer lies in how do you make the people understand their own self-interest? This is the heart of the question. It appears seemingly a simple question, but it is the heart of the challenge of Indian democracy. Because we centralized power phenomenally. Centralized doesn't mean in Delhi. Most power is in the state capital with the chief minister of the state, irrespective of the party or the state. Real centralization in the state with the chief minister. He's the monarch. He's the king. That's the way power operates in the country in the large part. Because we killed local governments, China, we call it an authoritarian country, a dictatorship. But China is in some respects far more democratic than India. I'll give an example. In India, all the local governments together spend 3% of the total government expenditure. In China, they spend 58% of the government expenditure. Power is genuinely decentralized. While basic policy decisions are made at the central level, but after due deliberation, the execution and operation is entirely local. In India, we cannot even imagine that. Your mayor is inconsequential. I don't know who is the mayor of Vijayawada. Your municipal chairman is irrelevant. Your sarpanch is inconsequential. We made local governments ciphers. Only in the local government do people understand the link between the vote they give and the consequences that follow. Because it's easy to understand what is happening, what is not happening. Only local government do people understand the taxes they pay and the services they receive in turn. The rest of it is all Mayajalam ante. And because we killed them, they were better earlier actually. There is no link between the vote and consequences. Therefore, people are now voting for 3 reasons. Money. I don't have to tell you people in Vijayawada or Andhra Pradesh or Telangana. ఎంత ఖర్చు అవుతుంది మీకు లోకల్ ఏ కాన్స్టిట్యున్సీ ఇది? వాట్ ఈస్ అసెంబ్లీ కాన్స్టిట్యున్సీ? Vijayawada East. Tell me truthfully, it doesn't matter who won, who lost. How much money have they spent? 25-30 crores at least? Each candidate? I am understating that. Vijayawada కాబట్టి 40-50 crores. అది ఇజ్జత్ కదా మనకి. Money. It does not mean money will guarantee victory. It means if you don't spread money, defeat is guaranteed in most cases. Second, short-term freebies. Individual short-term welfare without actually addressing the challenges of poverty or long-term economic growth. And therefore, Andhra Pradesh is now a standing monument to what is happening in the country. The only thing that you say is this welfare, that welfare and nothing else. No education, no healthcare, no infrastructure, no investment, no growth. Go to hell, no rule of law. But I give you this, I give you that, I give you that. And the third is caste, region, religion, whatever it takes. So we have to look at it deeper. Don't develop hatred of politicians. They are not animals from another planet. They are from among us. They respond to stimuli. They respond to incentives. They only want to get into power. They have the madness of wanting to be in public domain. That's not a terrible thing. But we created conditions where to get into public domain and to stay there requires terrible choices. We have to change that. It's a complex issue. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, but we can have a lengthy discussion later on. But I'm glad that you're paying attention to this, but go deeper. Don't think that politicians are evil, they're villains. Don't think there'll be a revolution coming. Ultimately, politics is a reflection of us, our level of thinking, our capacity to understand. And once that improves, and it takes time, it takes patience, it takes hard work, it takes a few hard knocks. I know more than probably anybody else in the country because I probably worked longer and harder, and maybe with some successes here and there in achieving change. I know how tough it is. I also know how much is the potential, how much is the possibility. So don't lose heart and don't make politicians the enemies. That does not solve the problem. Politics is a truly noble endeavor, the right kind of politics.
జయప్రకాష్ నారాయణ గారు చాలా నేను కూడా యాడ్ చేసుకున్నారు కొంత. పొలిటీషియన్స్ అనేది మనమే, ఇంకెవరూ లేదు. పాలిటిక్స్తో సంబంధం లేని వాడు ఉంటే ఒకటి లేడు. ఈవెన్ బిచ్చగాడు కూడా పాలిటిక్స్తో సంబంధం ఉంది. వాడు కూడా జిఎస్టీ పే చేసుకుని వాడు కూడా ట్యాక్స్ పే చేసి ఒక అగ్గి పెట్టుకున్నా దాని మీద ట్యాక్స్ పే చేస్తుంది. అంటే పాలిటిక్స్ సంబంధం లేకుండా ఎవ్వరు లేరు. అంటే సరైన వ్యక్తులు ఉన్నారు. మనుషులు ఎందుకు లేరు? ఇప్పుడు ఎలక్షన్స్ నుంచి చాలా మంచి వ్యక్తులు నించున్నారు. జయప్రకాష్ నారాయణ లాంటి వాళ్ళు నించున్నారు. ఎందుంచో లేదు, చాలా మంచి వాళ్ళు నించున్నారు. కానీ ఎలక్ట్ చేసుకున్నారా? మన జేడీ నారాయణ గారు నించున్నారు, జేడీ ఎస్పీ నారాయణ గారు. ఎంత ఐడియల్ పర్సన్ ఉన్నా ఎందుకని ఇలాంటి ఎందుకు ఎన్నుకోవట్లేదు? మనలో అనేది తప్పు, ప్రజల్లో ఉంది. ఓటుకి డబ్బులు, నోటుకి డబ్బు ఓటు అమ్ముకుంటున్నారు. అంచేత సరైన వాళ్ళని ఎన్నుకోసం చైతన్య గారు. అంచేత మంచి లీడర్షిప్ రావాలి. అందుకే ఇవాళ మనం పెట్టిన కాదు దేనికంటే యూత్లోంచే సరైన లీడర్షిప్ రావాలి. ఒక మంచి ఆవేదన ముందు యూత్లో చక్కని ఆవేదన. పూర్వకాలంలో లేరు యూత్. చాలా ప్రోగ్రెసివ్ థాట్ ఉంది. కానీ ఆ ప్రోగ్రెసివ్ థాట్కి తగ్గట్టు ఇదిగా మన ఎడ్యుకేషన్ లేదు, మనకు తక్కువ పెద్దవాళ్ళు లేరు, ఎవరు లేరు. అంటే జయప్రకాష్ నారాయణ గారు లాంటి వాళ్ళు పెద్దవాళ్ళు, జేడీ లక్ష్మీనారాయణ పెద్దవాళ్ళు, ఇలాంటి వాళ్ళందరూ కూడా గైడ్ చేస్తారు. కానీ నోటికి ఓటమ్ముకునే పరిస్థితి, ఆ రకమైన మనస్తత్వం జనాల్లో ఉంది. అందుకే రౌడీలు వస్తున్నారు పొలిటీషియన్స్ కింద. అందుకు వస్తున్నారు అవినీతి పరులు. వాళ్ళకి దెబ్బ కొట్టాలని మనమే. ఈ యువత మేలుకుంది అంటే, యువత చైతన్యం అయిందంటే అయిపోయారంతే అందరూ. అంటే సరైన ఆరోగ్యకరమైన డెమోక్రసీ రావాలంటే యువతలోంచి రావాలి చైతన్యం, యువతలోంచి రావాలి ఉత్సాహం, యువతలోంచి మంచితనం కోసం రావాలి. అదే వస్తుంది, వచ్చి తీరుతుంది, దానికోసమే ఈ నాంది.
In the spirit of rational inquiry, let me beg to differ. Suresh also is saying the same thing, the vice principal. Let me switch over to Telugu. ప్రజలు మూర్ఖులు కాబట్టి ఇట్లా జరుగుతోంది అంటే you have not solved the problem, you complicated the problem. Your analysis must lend itself to a meaningful, actionable solution. Otherwise, you got into a circular logic. ఈ ప్రజలు ఈ దేశంలో డెమోక్రసీ కావాలని కోరారు ఎప్పుడన్నా? గాంధీ గారు మరొకరు ఇంక్విలాబ్ జిందాబాద్ అంటే ఇంక్విలాబ్ జిందాబాద్ అన్నారు. బలో స్వతంత్ర భారత్, బలో స్వతంత్ర భారత్ అన్నారు. మీరు డెమోక్రసీ పెట్టారు, మేము అడగలేగా. పెట్టినప్పుడు ఇట్ వాజ్ యువర్ డ్యూటీ టు మేక్ ఇట్ వర్క్. It was your duty to build institutions in a manner that I understand what democracy is. How can you then blame me? The people are victims, not villains. The moment you start thinking that people are responsible for the failure of democracy, I know many people believe that. Therefore, I am saying that with tremendous emphasis at my command. I am saying with the deepest sense of feeling and responsibility. The moment you think that the voters are guilty and therefore things are bad, you can never solve the problem. Why are the people voting this way? మంచోడు కొట్టేస్తే జీవితాలు మారుతున్నాయా? లెట్స్ బి ఫ్రాంక్. జేపీకి ఓటేశారు, లక్ష్మీనారాయణకి ఓటేశారు, సమరం గారికి ఓటేశారు. మంచివాడికి ఓటేసామని కనిపిస్తోంది కానీ మంచివాడికి ఓటేయడం వల్ల మంచి జరుగుతున్న నమ్మకం కలగట్లా. బికాస్ వీ డిడ్ నాట్ బిల్డ్ ఇన్స్టిట్యూషన్స్ ఇన్ ఎ మేనర్ దట్ ద ఓట్ యాక్చువల్లీ ట్రాన్స్లేట్స్ ఇన్ టు అవుట్కమ్. కాబట్టి జనం ఏం చేస్తున్నారు బాగా అర్థం చేసుకోండి. చచ్చినోడి పెళ్లికి వచ్చిందా కట్నం, డబ్బు తీసుకుంటున్నారు. ఇది చచ్చినోడి పెళ్లి. మీరు చూడాల్సింది ఆ చచ్చినోడి పెళ్లి కాకుండా బతుకున్నోడి పెళ్లిగా చేయాలి మీరు. ఇట్ ఈస్ యువర్ డ్యూటీ, లీడర్షిప్స్ డ్యూటీ, రిఫార్మర్స్ డ్యూటీ టు బ్రింగ్ అబౌట్ రిఫార్మ్స్ ఇన్ ఎ మేనర్ దట్ ఓట్ యాక్చువల్లీ ట్రాన్స్లేట్స్ ఇన్ టు అవుట్కమ్స్. ఇట్స్ అ వెరీ డిఫికల్ట్ పాయింట్ టు క్యాప్చర్ బికాస్ వారు చెప్పింది చాలా ఈజీ. జనం కొంచెం నిస్సారంగా ఉన్నారు, చప్పట్లు కావాలంటే ఆయన తిట్టినట్టుగా పాలిటిషియన్ తిట్టంటే చప్పట్లు వచ్చేస్తాయి వెంటనే. We all love to hate our politicians, but that's the easy solution. It's not a solution. Pardon my saying so. Think deeply. How do you make people understand the value of the vote? How do you make them understand the link between the vote and consequences? How do you make them understand the link between the taxes you pay and the services you receive? Unless we crack that, and there are ways of doing it, I don't want to go into details, my whole life has been that. It will take time. That's why I started off my enterprise saying that in 5 years we can transform the country, because after all, you have evidence, you have logic, you have best practices, you have innovation, you have a solution, that's it. Ayipavale. Life taught me the painful lesson that it never happened like that in human history. Pioneers always propagate it, but a generation or two will take time to absorb it. That's why I gave you the story of Semmelweis. It will change, but it will not change by a miracle. It will change slowly and steadily as more and people get it, more and more people get it, and then change it. But blaming the voters is absolutely the wrong approach. It is the counterproductive approach. Pardon me for saying so. I love you, but that's an illogical frame. It's only creating a vicious cycle. We must break that and get into a virtuous cycle. Does it make sense? It's hard to understand. Even prime ministers don't understand. Don't worry. It will take time. We are not a very logical country yet. It will take time.
A pleasant morning to one and all. Hello, sir. Myself, Amina Afrin, and I'm pursuing Bachelor of Physiotherapy in Sims College of Physiotherapy, Guntur. So, my question to you is, how could we ensure that the separation of religion and state, though both of them are two different aspects, on paper it might be secular, but when it comes to action we don't find it, and people incorporate it as a symbiotic relationship between both of them, and your views on it, and how do we ensure for the separation of it, sir?
I hear you. First of all, don't be too pessimistic. On the whole, Indian state has separated religion from politics. On the whole, aberrations are there. They're more symbolic than substantive. First, take confidence in that. But as I said, in a society where 99% people have faith, many surveys showed the country with the highest proportion of population having faith in some god or the other, India is number one. United States is number two. 85% people have faith in God. Maybe the number is declining in the US. These are somewhat old surveys. In such a country, the political process cannot completely isolate itself. So they pay lip sympathy. They don't care. The good news is they don't care. They pay lip sympathy. And in a country where you are no longer able to mobilize people on rational grounds because the political system is not amenable to that for a variety of reasons, you use the primordial loyalties, religion, caste, region, language, because these are the only sources of political mobilization. Otherwise, I don't think Indian state and religion are inextricably linked. There is some amount of overlap. So I'm not very pessimistic about that. In the long term, as they feel that this is not going to give the votes, and if you create a framework in which people can transcend this and look at their self-interest, draw a bigger line. You remember the story of Timarasu? And somebody drew a line and said, how do you shorten it without erasing it? He said, draw a bigger line. Once you draw a bigger line, once people understand the self-interest, then this becomes less important. Again, questions are very wonderful, but solutions they require a little more thought, a little more depth. So I actually don't believe that in India, religion is dominating politics. It's not true. Religion is utilized cynically for political purposes. That is true. And that can end as we become more and more enlightened, and I am optimistic about that.
Good morning, sir. I am Meghamala from PSCMR. What are the values of importance in the democracy, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of democracy?
The second question first. A man called Plato, have you heard of Plato? Plato, in the Western societies, we had our own very eminent political thinkers before Plato, but in the Western political philosophy, Plato was probably Socrates and Plato were corresponding number one, number two. Plato, in his Republic, basically he argued, if philosophers are kings, and if kings are philosophers, there is no need for laws. He did not believe in democracy. He thought democracy was a disaster. He was not very wrong in that, from that point of view. But Plato later on wrote a more important book called The Laws. Why? Please follow this carefully. By the time Plato realized that a philosopher is not likely to become a king. By nature, a philosopher does not pursue power. To pursue power in a naked manner requires a certain mindset which is less than philosophical. And two, if a philosopher does by accident become the ruler, the king, it's very difficult to remain a philosopher as a king. Because power, once you have it, power is prone to abuse. Power is prone to corruption. As Lord Acton said, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And three, more important, even if the philosopher remained non-corrupt, true to his philosophy, ultimately things happen not because somebody gives orders. The society must at large be willing to follow. There is no guarantee that the people will follow. And therefore, Plato came to the realization that you require a system of laws to regulate human behavior and to contain the power of the government. That's the reason why we need democracy. Supposing you guarantee to me, apart from the moral implications, you guarantee to me that we'll have somebody like Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, or somebody like Deng Xiaoping, a humanist, a wise person who really thinks about the society, who is rational in his approach, meritocratic, and promotes public good. Even if I'm not dedicated to liberty, which I am, I probably will will consider that. But I have no guarantee. Among all the dictators of the world, undemocratic leaders of the world, in the past 150 years, you can only show, in fact, throughout human history, you can only show these two people in modern history, Lee Kuan Yew and Deng Xiaoping to some extent. Throughout human history, maybe an Ashoka you can show, at least a part of Ashoka's reign, not all his reign. Maybe an Akbar in part. Whereas I can show you 1,000 rascals who demeaned humanity, who destroyed civilizations, who enslaved people, and therefore that's a risk we cannot take. Churchill said, democracy is a terrible form of government. It's the worst form of government, except for every other form of government. There's no other better form of government. Nothing else will be trusted. So don't ever have doubt about democracy. How to make it work better is the option. Because the moment you give up on democracy, you will almost certainly be under the tyranny of terrible fellows. Because we have not seen it yet, we don't realize what would happen. With all imperfections, an imperfect democracy is better than a perfect dictatorship. Now, the first part of the question, I forgot now. What is it? Basically, we must understand what democracy is. Democracy is not vote and shout. Indian democracy is only vote and shout. There is no other country where we vote with such gusto, with such enthusiasm. like a celebration, a festival. No other country. So much of noise, so much of shouting, shor machana, no other country. And after election is over, there's no other country where you immediately go and do Rasta Roko, Hartal, Istifa Do, Murdabad, Rajinama Chey. Our democracy is vote and shout democracy. While voting is important, it's not enough for democracy. Democracy requires more in terms of values. It requires not only self-governance and political freedoms, it requires empowerment of citizens. That's what local governments are about. It requires rule of law. We have no rule of law in India. We have rule of the powerful. We have might is right in this country, but it will not the better. It requires self-correcting institutions. Democracy is much more than vote and shout. And until we realize democracy is more than the sum total of elections and election results, we'll continue to languish.
My name is Gangi Reddy. I am from Lepakshi, near Hindupur, Anantapur district. For the last 46 years, yes.
Farthest corner of state.
Yes, it's my passion. That's why I am here. Sir, Goragaru propagated partyless politics. If there are parties, all the villages will be divided, vertically divided. So automatically the competition develops between these two parties. So that's why they are spending most of their money towards social welfare programs, and taking lot of loan from the banks and international banks. So in a way, government is singing a jolapata, like giving pensions, rice, whatever subsidies, all the welfare programs. It's a jolapata, creating a confidence that in the next party will do something more like that, creating a asha in the people. It's a jolapata. On the other side, these castes and religions, prayer heads, they are saying, no, there is vidhi, rata, karma, atma, next janma. Be like that. He will takes care of you. So this kind of mattu mandu, this is jolapata, mattu mandu. ఈ రెండు కలిపి పావర్టీ లైన్ ని దాటకుండా చూస్తున్నారు. పావర్టీ లైన్ దాటాలంటే వాళ్ళకి అర్థం కాదు వాట్ ఈస్ సర్ప్లస్, వాట్ ఈస్ ఎక్స్పెండిచర్. అది ఎప్పుడూ ఫ్యామిలీలో క్యాలిక్యులేట్ చేయలే. Unless I get at the end of the year, unless I get some surplus, I cannot cross the poverty line. But how many people understand this? So, among the common people, there is no understanding of the system, economy, and in the middle class, they are busy, very busy with their own affairs, and the top people, they want to see that it continues, the system continues. So, there are three vested interests in this. So, how to come out of this?
There are two elements in your question. One is about the party system. The other is about how to come out of democratic crisis. Very eminent thinkers like Gora, Loknaik, JP, M.N. Roy, others, they argued for partyless democracy. The Constitution does not recognize parties. Only in the 10th schedule subsequent in 1985, for the first time, there is a mention of political parties in the Constitution. And even in the law, only symbols allotment order recognizes parties. So theoretically, parties are not necessary for democracy. American founding fathers actually were hostile to political parties. But what experience taught us is, except in the case of Switzerland maybe to some extent, for practical purposes, the only vehicle for mobilization of people for participation in politics is party system. There is no other mechanism available globally. Therefore, however painful or dysfunctional sometimes the party system is, it seems to be inevitable. So how do you make the parties work for the people? Three things in the Indian context. One, internal democracy in parties. Today there is no party. Parties are private estates in most cases in India. Parties are run like jamindaris, feudal jamindaris, jagirs. So it's no longer a party. We're calling it a party. We are investing that with all the authority of a party and the privileges of a party, but it doesn't function as a party. Parties must be people's vehicles for participation. They must be owned by the members. So internal democracy mandated by law is necessary in my view. The second is local governments are already mentioned. If you notice, panchayat elections, they always conduct without parties. Have you noticed?
Noticed, but they are also vertically divided, sir. No.
Precisely why parties are afraid. ఆ గ్రామంలో వెళ్ళి పెడితే చేతులు కాలుతాయని చెప్పని గ్రామంలో మాత్రం పార్టీ వద్దు, కానీ మండలం వచ్చేసరికి మున్సిపాలిటీ వచ్చేసరికి మీరు పార్టీ వాళ్ళైతే మా ఉనికి పోతుంది. సో ఇఫ్ యూ ఎంపవర్ లోకల్ గవర్నమెంట్స్, ఇఫ్ పీపుల్ అండర్స్టాండ్ ద డైరెక్ట్ లింక్ బిట్వీన్ ద ఓట్ అండ్ కాన్సిక్వెన్సెస్ అండ్ ట్యాక్సెస్ అండ్ సర్వీసెస్, పార్టీకి అతీతంగా మీలాంటి వాళ్ళు సమర్థులు యువత ముందుకొచ్చి ప్రజల మన్నన పొందే అవకాశం ఉంటుంది. మనం వాటిని చంపేశాం. దట్స్ ద సెకండ్ థింగ్. థర్డ్ ఇస్ ఎలక్టరల్ సిస్టమ్. మన ఎలక్టరల్ సిస్టంలో ద థ్రెషోల్డ్ ఫర్ సక్సెస్ ఈజ్ వెరీ వెరీ హై. ఫస్ట్ పాస్ట్ ద పోస్ట్ సిస్టమ్ ప్రపంచంలో ఎక్కడ లేదు. ఇది ఓన్లీ బ్రిటన్లో ఉంది. బ్రిటన్ పాలించిన కాలనీల్లో ఉంది. మనం ప్రపంచమంతా ఉందనుకుంటున్నాం మనకు తెలియక. బ్రిటన్లో కూడా దీన్ని వదిలేస్తున్నారు చాలా చోట్ల. బ్రిటన్లో కూడా యూరోపియన్ ఎలక్షన్ జరిగినప్పుడు బ్రిటన్లో ఈ సిస్టమ్ లేదు. ఇప్పుడు ప్రస్తుతం బ్రిటన్లో నార్దర్న్ ఐర్లాండ్, స్కాట్లాండ్, వేల్స్ రీజనల్ పార్లమెంట్స్ ఉంటాయి. అక్కడ ఈ సిస్టమ్ లేదు. బ్రిటన్లో లండన్ సిటీకి మేయర్ డైరెక్ట్గా అనుకుంటారు, అక్కడ ఈ సిస్టమ్ లేదు. బ్రిటన్ పాలించిన న్యూజిలాండ్లో లేదు, వదిలేసుకున్నారు. బ్రిటన్ పాలించిన ఆస్ట్రేలియాలో లేదు, వదిలేసుకున్నారు. కెనడాలో మాత్రమే ఉంది. మనం మట్టు పట్టు కూర్చున్నాం. ఎవరో చెప్పారు చాలా కాలం క్రితం, ఇండియన్స్ విల్ బి ద లాస్ట్ లివింగ్ ఇంగ్లీష్ మెన్ అని చెప్పని. మనం అది పట్టు కూర్చున్నాం. దేర్ ఇస్ నో రేషనల్ అట్ ఆల్, అలవాటు పడ్డం తప్పితే. దిస్ సిస్టమ్ ఇస్ ఇనిమికల్ టు new voices, inimical to reform. So we have to switch over to another system. There are many options. I have been always advocating a very sensibly designed proportional representative system. Appudi party autocracy itla undadu, provided there is internal democracy in parties. So ee moodu cheste, then you get the best out of party system, because I don't see an opportunity to remove parties from democracy right now. We like it or not, how to reform them, make them work for the people rather than the party bosses. That is the challenge today. Andukane I am opposed to anti-defection law. Anti-defection law is a bogus law. ఎమ్మెల్యేలు ఎంపీలని పార్టీ నాయకుడికి స్లేవులను చేసి పారేసింది. డిఫెక్షన్లో పోలా పాడు లేదు, వాడికి స్లేవులు అయిపోయారు. అంత గొంతు పోయింది పూర్తిగా. ఒకప్పుడు ఎమ్మెల్యే ఎంపీ గొంతు ఉపయోగించేవాడు. టుడే దే ఆర్ టెరిఫైడ్ ఆఫ్ ద పార్టీ బాసెస్. సో వీ హ్యావ్ టు ట్రాన్స్ఫార్మ్ ద నేచర్ ఆఫ్ పార్టీ ఫంక్షనింగ్. We cannot really destroy the party system. I don't see a viable alternate.
డాక్టర్ జయప్రకాష్ నారాయణ గారు చెప్పిన దానికి నేను కొద్దిగా యాడ్ చేస్తాను. ఎందుకంటే గోరా గారి గురించి పార్టీలెస్ డెమోక్రసీ అనే గోరా గారు ప్రపోజ్ చేశారు. దట్ ఈస్ వెరీ వెరీ ఇంపార్టెంట్. అసలు ప్రజాస్వామ్యం అనేది ఏంటంటే ప్రజల చేత ప్రజల కొరకు ప్రజల పాలన, ప్రజల చేత ప్రజల కొరకు ప్రజల పాలన, మన పాలన. దేనికోసం? మనందరి సంక్షేమం కోసం. మనందరికీ తిండి కావాలి, కట్టుకొని బట్ట కావాలి, ఉండడానికి వసతి కావాలి, చదువు, ఉద్యోగాలు, అలాగే పరిశ్రమలు, ఇవన్నీ కావాలి. ఇవంతా ఏంటి? మన సంక్షేమం, మన సుఖం కోసం, మన సౌకర్యం కోసం, మన సంతోషం కోసం. దీని పార్టీలు దేనికండి? ఇప్పుడు ఇంతమంది చెప్పారు, గ్రామీణ స్థాయిలో పాలిటిక్స్ అవసరం, పార్టీలు లేవు. కానీ మండల స్థాయికి వచ్చే పార్టీలు. అసలు మీరు కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ తీసుకున్నట్లయితే మన భారతదేశంలో కాన్స్టిట్యూషనే తీసుకున్నాం. పార్టీలో ఒక పక్క విశృంఖలంగా ఉన్నాయి. రెండో పక్క కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ప్రకారంగా పార్టీ ప్రస్తావనే లేదు ఎక్కడ కూడా. పార్టీ ప్రస్తావన మన రాజ్యాంగంలో ఎక్కడ పార్టీ ప్రస్తావన లేదు. మెజార్టీ సభ్యులు ఎన్నుకున్న ప్రతినిధి ముఖ్యమంత్రి అవుతాడు, అయితే ప్రధానమంత్రి అవుతాడు అని ఉంది, అంతే. మెజార్టీ సభ్యులు ఎన్నుకున్న మనిషి, అభ్యర్థి, ఎన్నుకోబడి అభ్యర్థి ప్రధానమంత్రి అయినా అవుతాడు, లేదా ముఖ్యమంత్రి అయినా అవుతాడు, అంతే. ఎక్కడ అంతే. ఎక్కడ పార్టీ అని వాడు లేదు. అయినా సరే ఒక చెడు సంప్రదాయం అలా వస్తూనే ఉంది. దీని ప్రకారం ఇప్పుడు అందుకని డివైడ్ అయిపోయే మనుషులు డివైడ్ చేసి పరిచారు. అంచేత పార్టీలెస్ డెమోక్రసీ చేయడం వస్తేనే, అంచేత వికేంద్రీకరణ. మన గాంధీ గారు కూడా గ్రామరాజ్యం అన్నారు, వినోబా గారు కూడా గ్రామరాజ్యం అన్నారు, లోకనాయక్ జయప్రకాష్ నారాయణ కూడా గ్రామరాజ్యం అన్నారు. తర్వాత గోరా గారు కూడా ఆ గ్రామరాజ్య విధానం, దీన్నే పార్టీస్ ప్రజలు అక్కడ ఎన్నుకుంటారు. ఆ తర్వాత నెక్స్ట్ మండలాలు, నెక్స్ట్ వాళ్ళు అన్నీ కూడా ప్రజల కోసమే. ఇక పార్టీలు ఏంటండి, ఈ పార్టీలు తన్నుకోవడం కోసం, ప్రజల కోసం అయిపోయింది. ఎప్పుడైతే పదవుల కోసం అయిందో ప్రజల సమస్యలు పక్కదారి పట్టిస్తాయి, ప్రజల్ని పక్కదారి పట్టించారు. వాళ్ళ మధ్య గొడవలు పెడుతున్నారు, తన్నుకోమన్నారు, చంపుకోమన్నారు, తర్వాత వీళ్ళు ఎంజాయ్ చేస్తున్నారు జరిగేది. అందుకని కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ప్రకారంగా, రాజ్యాంగం ప్రకారంగా పార్టీ ఇంకోటి ఎంత అన్యాయం చేస్తున్నారంటే పార్టీ అభ్యర్థిగా నిలిచినోడేమో సింబలు. ఒక మంచి మనిషి నించుంటే, జయప్రకాష్ నారాయణ నించుంటే, ఒక మామూలు స్వతంత్ర సింబల్ అది. అప్పుడు కూడా ప్రచారం చేసుకోవాలి, నా బొమ్మ ఇది, నా బొమ్మ ఇది అని. వీరేమో ఎప్పుడో ఉన్న బొమ్మ ప్రకారం ఏమో వాళ్ళు ఏ అనామకుడు కూడా నెగ్గిపోతున్నాడు, మంచివాడు ఏమీ లేకుండా వెనక్కిపోతున్నాడు. వాట్ దిస్ అన్యాయం కదా అసలు, ఎంత అన్యాయం అసలు. యాక్చువల్గా ఒకరికేమో పార్టీ ప్రస్తావనే లేదు, ఆ పార్టీకి గుర్తింపే లేదు. ఆ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ప్రకారంగా వాడికి మాత్రం ఏమో సింబల్ ఇచ్చేసి 20 రోజుల్లోనేమో వాడిని నెగ్గించేస్తారు. ఎప్పుడో కష్టపడిన సింబల్ లేదు. మన దేశంలో లిటరసీ లేదు. లిటరసీలో జయప్రకాష్ నారాయణ గారి పేరు చూడలేరు. అర్థం కాదు ఎందుకు ఇలా ముద్ర కొడుతున్నారు. ఆ ఎద్దుకో, గాడిదకో, కుక్కకో, పందికో వేస్తున్నాడు. వాట్ దిస్ చివరిగా పందుల్ని, ఎద్దుల్ని, కుక్కల్ని ఎన్నుకుంటున్నారు. అంచేత ఈ పార్టీలెస్ డెమోక్రసీ అనేదే కరెక్ట్ అయిన ప్రజాస్వామికం. అలాగే గ్రామరాజ్య విధానం దగ్గర నుంచి వాళ్ళు చేసిన సరిగ్గా అవుతుంది. గోరా గారు చాలా కరెక్ట్గా చెప్పారు, చాలా కరెక్ట్గా చేశారు. లోక్నాయక్ జయప్రకాష్ నారాయణ ఆయన దానికి చేశారు. వినోబా గారు కూడా చాలా గ్రామరాజ్య విధానం చెప్పారు. ఆ గ్రామరాజ్య విధానం ద్వారానే అన్ని చక్కగా జరుగుతాయి. అంతే పార్టీలెస్ డెమోక్రసీ గ్రామ స్థాయి నుంచి గ్రామంలో పార్టీలెస్ డెమోక్రసీ పనిచేసినప్పుడు లోక్సభ లెవెల్ ఎందుకు పనిచేయదు, దేశ లెవెల్ ఎందుకు పనిచేయదండి? ప్రజల కోసం బై ది పీపుల్, ఫర్ ది పీపుల్, ఆఫ్ ది పీపుల్ లేనప్పుడు ఎందుకు ప్రజాస్వామ్యం చేయదు? వీళ్ళ పదవుల కోసం, వీళ్ళ అధికారం కోసం, వీళ్ళ దర్పం కోసం, వీళ్ళ డాబు కోసం ఈ ప్రజాస్వామ్యం అయింది. అందుకని చైతన్యం కావాలి. యువత మేలుకొని నేను చెప్తున్నాను, మీలోంచి నాయకత్వం రావాలి, నాయకత్వం ప్రజలు రావాలి. మన తిప్పి కొట్టండి ఇలాంటి సరే వాళ్ళు ఎన్నుకోండి. అప్పుడే మన దేశం బాగుంటుంది, మన హాయిగా ఉంటాం, అందరికీ తిండి వస్తాయి.
ఈ కార్యక్రమం మీకు ఎంతో నచ్చింది కదా. ఇటువంటి మరిన్ని వీడియోల కోసం అనతి కాలంలోనే 20 కోట్లకు పైగా వ్యూస్ సాధించిన సమరం ఛానల్ సమర్పించు ఎథిస్ట్ సెంటర్ ఛానల్కు సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేయండి, లైక్ చేయండి, మీ ఫ్రెండ్స్కి షేర్ చేయండి. అలాగే ప్రక్కనున్న గంట సింబల్ని ప్రెస్ చేయడం మర్చిపోకండి.